Most people imagine technological progress as a straight line, with every step forward bringing us closer to perfection, more discoveries, and innovations. But in reality, humanity has had many setbacks along the way. The fall of Rome and the collapse of the Bronze Age are just two of the most striking examples. You could think of progress like a staircase. Humanity climbs up 5 steps, only to tumble down 7, before finally climbing 10 more. The reasons behind these setbacks are complex, but here's one way to look at it. The formation of any state starts with building a foundation, an economic base. After this comes rapid growth, adding more levels to the building. But if, at a certain point, the foundation isn't maintained or upgraded, the whole structure can collapse. Rome fell because of its reliance on slavery and various social tensions. Barbarians simply sped up the inevitable, toppling a system already cracking at the seams. Yet the Roman Empire had technologies that Europe would take roughly 1,000 years to rediscover. One such example is the ability to produce large steel plates. Europeans didn't reach this level of armor technology until around the 13th century with brigandines, and full breastplates didn't appear until the 14th century. But if a Roman traveled 1,000 years into the future, he wouldn't be all that shocked by the technology. Steel breastplates and muscle cuirasses existed in the ancient world well before our era. And I'd venture to say that during its imperial period, Rome could have outfitted a significant part of its army with this armor. Unlike the Middle Ages, where, say, 15th century England had around 1,000 knights, the Roman Empire commanded a professional army of over 100,000 at times. This posed challenges because muscle cuirasses, like medieval armor, were custom-made to fit individual soldiers. Despite their excellent protection, solid steel plates were difficult to repair. In general, this type of armor was impractical for outfitting a large professional army. Thus, it was mainly reserved for higher-ranking officials, like tribunes and legates. Unfortunately, few Roman cuirasses have survived, but there's an interesting study on a 3rd century BC Greek steel cuirass. The metal in this Greek armor is on par with that used in the armor of the 16th century Duke Cosimo de' Medici. Notably, the Greeks often used steel cuirasses in the field. What's surprising is that bronze cuirasses had a hardness of around 155 vickers, comparable to the mass-produced steel armor of 15th to 16th century Europe. The hardness of forged bronze could reach 250, while, for instance, the armor of Polish winged hussars rarely exceeded 200. The officer armor of an English pikeman in the 18th century had a hardness of only 95. The drop in protective quality from the late medieval to early modern periods had its own causes, which we'll get to later. There's some thought that the shift from bronze to steel was mainly due to the latter's lower cost. However, the Greeks and Romans both used large steel plates for armor. I'm talking about the Lorica segmentata, which became popular in the 1st century AD. One theory is that during the Sacrovir Rebellion, traditional weapons couldn't penetrate gladiators' plate armor. To suppress the rebellion, according to Tacitus, legionnaires had to grab pickaxes, and after that, the armor was adopted by the army. Take a look at the reconstruction of the Crupularius gladiator's appearance. Notice how the helmet closely resembles the high medieval top helm. Overall, fighters from the past actually had stronger protection than 12th and 13th century knights. Another theory suggests that the segmentata was simply developed by order of Octavian Augustus. This armor weighed about 20 pounds, heavier than some medieval breastplates, yet lighter than the Roman hamada chainmail, which often tipped the scales at over 26 pounds. Steel thickness ranged from about 1 to 2.5 millimeters. It offered excellent protection for the torso and shoulders, with the lower body shielded by a shield. In a way, you could call it specialized gear for fighting barbarian infantry. It provided solid protection from overhead blows and arrows, but restricted shoulder movement for wide swings, which legionnaires didn't rely on, favoring short, quick strikes instead. Metallurgical studies show that most Roman armor plates had less than 0.5% of slag content and a hardness of 200 to 260 vickers. 14th to 15th century European armor had similar hardness. Nowadays, this level of hardness is comparable to mid-grade tool steel. But there's a twist. In the Middle Ages, armor production was largely done by small workshops using hand tools. Yet, according to documents like the Notitia Dignitatum, the Roman Empire had around 40 large armament factories. These were called fabricae, a term we recognize since we borrowed it from the Romans. One fabrica could employ over 600 people, often free men whose work counted as military service. The Romans also used heavy mechanical hammers, which impacted the finished product. While Roman and medieval plates had similar hardness, the methods used to achieve this differed. Before the 16th century, Europeans hardened armor by increasing its carbon content. The Romans, however, used low-carbon metal but mechanically hardened it with powerful hammers and other techniques. This gave Roman armor with a hardness of around 240 vicars, about 3 to 4 times more impact toughness. Italian blacksmiths only started using similar techniques in the 16th century. In the 17th century, with the rise of firearms, high hardness became a drawback, as a bullet could simply shatter armor. Examples made from relatively soft metals emerged, but with such a level of slag that the Romans would likely have been horrified. Still, duplex plates emerged in the 17th century, combining multiple layers of high-quality metals with varying hardness levels, though at a high cost. Even here, early modern blacksmiths wouldn't have amazed the Romans. For instance, the plate from a Roman armor found in Carlisle's camp, despite being about 1 millimeter thick overall, consisted of 3 layers, an outer hard layer and 2 softer ones. This wasn't uneven carbon distribution, but forge welding. This technique appears to have been quite common. In historical films, Romans are always shown wearing Lorica segmentata, but reality was more varied. Segmentata, while evolving over time with more durable hidden fastenings, required maintenance, sometimes with skilled repairs. During the prosperous 1st and 2nd centuries, Romans could sustain a complex logistics network, and segmentata's popularity was high. However, the 3rd century brought a socio-economic crisis. Forced to wait months or years without proper supplies, soldiers came to a sensible conclusion: mail armor was easier to carry and could be field repaired. Analysis of Roman chainmail by David Sim shows that it was generally pure metal with hardness between 164 to 437 vicars. The basic Roman soldier's armor could be compared to the 10th century chainmail of Duke Wenceslas of Bohemia, which had lots of slag impurities and hardness from 151 to 177 vicars. Wenceslas's armor falls short of even the least impressive Roman examples. Overall, in the realm of chainmail production, medieval Europe never managed to reach the level of the Roman Empire, even though, up until the 13th century, it remained the main type of knightly armor. Without a doubt, in the 15th and 16th centuries, there were suits of armor that outperformed Roman ones in terms of quality and even metal craftsmanship. However, these were custom works by renowned artisans. But when it comes to more or less mass production, Roman craftsmen held their own and sometimes even surpassed not only the late Middle Ages, but also the early modern period. Comparing armor by surface coverage isn't entirely fair, since this was usually dictated by combat tactics. Amusingly, if Roman imperial-era blacksmiths time-traveled 600 to 800 years forward, they'd see a decline in craftsmanship. Even if they landed 1,000 or 1,200 years in the future, they likely wouldn't find much new to take note of.
Michelle, I don't regret this, but I both rue and lament it.